Hi everyone, it's Ellie from the Curious Geographer, and very exciting today we are joined by Southampton University. So we are going to find out all about their amazing geography degree and different options you can do if you're interested in studying geography at Southampton. Have a look at the live schedule, which is coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll also be live again this evening, and if you haven't already, scan the QR code just here, and you can get the live schedule to your phone as well and click on the links because it's interactive. So we're going to find a bit about the BA and the BSc, and if you have any questions, just write them in the comments and then we'll ask them to our professors who have joined us. So we're going to be joined by Professor Stephen Darby and Dr. Emma Rowe, who's going to tell us a bit about what it is like to study geography at the University of Southampton. So if I could pass over to Dr. Rowe first, if you could let us know a bit about your area of interest and what you find interesting about geography, that would be fantastic.
So I am a human geographer, but I'm fascinated in understanding the relationships between nature and society. I actually was a human and physical geographer as an undergraduate, but my fascination with natural science has actually led me to actually want to study the social science of our relationships with nature. So I do lots of work studying our relationships with animals, whether they're farm animals or laboratory animals as well, like mice. You might see the little bag of a mouse there on the back of my wall. To understand how we can improve their welfare, what are our ethical responsibilities of our relationships with animals. And I see this as being kind of critical to understanding about how we can move the planet towards improving planetary health by better understanding our society's relationship with the non-human world. So I look at that in terms of food geographies, and actually today I've been thinking about microbial geographies in the food supply chain, which actually starts to touch on viral geographies and issues to do obviously with things like COVID and then understanding society's relationship with viruses. So that's me.
Wow, I love it when universities tell them their area of interest, because I hadn't actually asked that before, and that sounds fascinating. Very much not kind of your typical school geography. So you might have some questions about that as well. And then Professor Darby, if you'd like to tell us a bit about what is your area of interest and what you like about geography.
Well, sure, thank you, and thanks for hosting this event. Well, what a great question, because there are really so many facets of this wonderful discipline of geography that I'm interested in, that I could answer this in all sorts of ways. But I guess you would say that I am a more conventional physical geographer in a way, and in particular I study sediment transport processes in rivers. And the kinds of things that I'm interested in is that I look at how the physical and biological processes that shape the world's largest rivers and their deltas, how those processes are being affected by natural and human-induced environmental change, and what the implications of those changes are in terms of managing river resources. And of course, so many of the world's people depend on those resources for their lives and their livelihoods. So just to give you an example of that, in recent years, I've been working especially in parts of the global south, and with colleagues, I've been working on the Mekong River. And we've been looking recently at how sand mining has been affecting that particular river system. A lot of the audience might know that after water, sand is actually the second most consumed natural resource on the planet. We get through, every person on the planet on average gets through 18 kilograms of it every day. And a lot of that sand comes from the big rivers. And of course, it goes off to be used in construction. The world's rapidly urbanizing. And the problem with that is so much sand's being taken out of the rivers that the beds of these rivers are being lowered down, scoured away. And that triggers all sorts of problems like riverbank erosion. And in fact, the shape of the Mekong, we've shown that the channels become so deepened that it's a much more hydraulically efficient duct now. So down in the delta, the tides can actually flow in much, much further inland than they used to even just 10 years ago. So actually sand mining in the Mekong Delta is the main cause of saltwater intrusion in that locale. So things like, one of the things that I find fascinating is that these impacts, bank erosion, saltwater intrusion, are causing such damage to the environment, to people's lives and livelihoods, that people are abandoning the agricultural land, migrating to cities. And of course, those cities are expanding, get more concrete, we have more demand for sand, we have this kind of vicious spiral. So those are some of the things that I'm really interested in at the moment, and that are reflected in the things that I teach on the course at Southampton.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. And actually, we've been learning a bit about water conflicts anyway on the Mekong, and we had a previous interview looking at how about dam building as well on the Mekong. So it would be quite interesting. It kind of would complement to understand a bit more about that maybe in a future live interview if you'd be happy to come back. And yeah, it kind of links with what our Year 13s at my school are learning at the moment. So let's get into geography at the University of Southampton. So I'm going to start with Emma and the kind of BA side. Emma, if you could please tell us a bit about what is the BA side in Southampton, what do students expect to study, and kind of what do we mean? There's two options. They either choose BA or BSc. So yeah, just if you could help us by understanding a bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. So if you choose to study at Southampton, you need to register either as a BA geography student or a BSc geography student. But in the first year, you actually do the same courses, although it will affect who your personal tutor is, about whether they're a BA member of staff or a BSc member of staff. But I think this is common across a number of degrees, that to begin with, we do a bit of BA and BSc in that first year. But in that first year, you'll do some really exciting human geography courses like A Global World. You'll start to learn about some issues of kind of social and health geography, and also start to think about how to think across human and physical geography about some of the kind of big challenges, like, for example, like what Steve has been talking about, the Mekong Delta, and the fact is you can't only understand some of these big challenges that we have in the world through being a physical geographer. You might also need to think about some of the social science angles as well. But essentially, as a BA geographer, what we're trying to train you as is as a social scientist. Okay, so that's where it makes a big difference when you come into the second year, where we start teaching you about the research methods and the theories that are particular to human geography. And there we're drawing on social scientific research methods. Those social scientific research methods, though, can include quantitative methods, so kind of statistical methods, and we have great expertise in geography at Southampton on the human side about using data sets to actually model relationships between different kinds of populations. So we kind of use some of that, and like using GIS modeling, for example. So using kind of some techniques which can be used on the physical world, but actually also really valuable in helping to understand about where people are in the world. And then we've also got the qualitative techniques as well, which we train you at, which are very varied again. The qualitative research, which is what I'm more familiar at using, we teach you about interviewing people, about focus groups, about doing ethnography, about observing people, and also increasingly now we're interested in kind of participatory research, where you try to actually become a participant or kind of think about how you can change the power dynamics between who you are and what you're interested in studying. So you're not assuming that that you're coming in as the expert about something, but trying to listen more keenly into how that world you want to study might actually be trying to tell you about how it wants to be known. And those techniques, for example, my colleague Andy has been using those across disability research, but then I use them also in my studies of the non-human world, because we also need to kind of think more keenly about how the non-human world is actually shaping things that we know about. So like animals, for example, you wouldn't say that your animal is dumb, your pet is dumb. There's actually a lot of things that we learn if we actually pay more attention to how our animals respond to us and what their bodies can tell us. And so there's a whole load of new techniques that we'll be able to teach you about on the kind of the BA geography side in terms of those methodologies. And then just to tell you a little bit about the kind of the major themes that you'll get to study in that second year. So this is where it's also the big year where you're starting to think about what your research project is going to be on. But we're going to teach you kind of key ideas around kind of health and well-being, key ideas in economic geography, and also its relationship to kind of cultural economic geography as well. And then the other kind of key area is cultural geography, which is the area which I teach in again. And so they're the sort of three core areas that you'll learn alongside kind of theoretical approaches in human geography and quantitative approaches. And then when you move into your third year, then you have a whole range of different modules to choose from. So, you know, from geographies in nature, which is mine, or you can modules about kind of sexuality, or you can choose modules about kind of health geographies or GIS modules if you want to kind of develop your techniques in those areas, or modules about kind of even economics. So one of the key aspects of our course is the fact that you've got the ability to kind of choose what modules really interest you, and you're also able to choose modules from other parts of the university as well. So, you know, I have some of my students who may choose to take an anthropology module, or might choose to take a population studies module, or perhaps might choose to actually take a language course and take that each year to kind of keep their language skills going. So there's a whole range of different options available, but you can basically start to develop and feel what your own personal interests are, and we kind of give you space and capacity to develop those. And that really comes to fruition when you do your dissertation, which is one of the major things that you produce in your third year, is because it's that is really your chance to actually put everything into practice, identify something, some research question that fascinates you, and kind of pursue it for a number of weeks, months, until you write up that final piece of work. And often that is then very informative as to what you might go on to do in your life after university, whether further degree or maybe employment opportunities as well, because you'll kind of actually develop some expertise in a particular area.
I think there might be maybe some questions later on like dissertations and careers, which would be quite interesting. If we go over to the BSc now, Steve, you could tell us a bit about what the students expect to study on the BSc.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I won't repeat how Emma explained the structure of the program, but I'll give you a little bit of insight into the content. So in that first year, which is indeed common to both the BSc and the BA geographers, the physical geography would focus on key modules around geographies of risk is an important one, but we also cover the mechanics of the Earth system, how climate in particular changes both over short and long-term timescales. And we also do a lot of process work in terms of the processes that shape the Earth's surface in a module that's called Dynamic Landscapes. And that will intersect with a lot of the work that the people listening to this will be familiar with from their courses at the moment, in terms of things like desert environments, dryland landscapes, glaciers, water cycle, and carbon processes, as well as coasts.
What's happened to Steve?
So also, sorry, I'll pause for a moment. Okay, yeah, I think I was saying that we had a range of these first year modules. Then in the second year, students can begin to specialise in their interests in physical geography. The first part of that year involves a series of kind of courses that train students in the underpinning methodologies. Field work is involved, laboratory work, cutting across a variety of topics, and again, training in statistical data analysis and spatial analysis techniques as well, utilising some of the key strengths of colleagues at Southampton in those domains. Then really for the rest of the second year and moving on into the third year, there's a whole series of modules that students have the freedom to choose from and tailor their interests in physical geography to their own requirements. And I'll just mention a variety of those, but again, that we have strong interests in desert landscapes, in glaciers and icy landscapes, rivers, of course, I've already mentioned, and river management. We did quite a bit of work on climate change and how that influences the hydrological cycle and other aspects. Also, implications for climate adaptation as well, which of course intersects onto the human geography side also. We also have quite a strong cluster of interests around environmental change, both in the near-term future, let's say the next few decades, but also the mechanisms that have driven that.
Yeah.
Change. Both. Am I back?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm not quite sure what's happening with my connection, but all right. So so you get the sense that there's a lot of different areas of physical geography. And again, as Emma said, for the human geography, the crowning glory really is the opportunity to engage in that deep piece of work, the dissertation. And there the world really is your oyster in terms of selecting a topic, having that one-to-one guidance with an individual supervisor in your area of interest to really develop an in-depth knowledge and understanding of a particular facet of physical geography.
And I think now we're going to talk. So that was a really good overview. I was going to say, if there are any questions, if people want to write them in the comments, and then we'll get through, or just let us know. BA, BSc, yeah, any questions. If we go on to kind of why, we've kind of talked about the course, and hopefully your students are watching this, they're keen in studying geography anyway. But Emma, what would you say? Why geography, but particularly why geography at Southampton?
So why geography? I guess, what's amazing about geography is that it can take you to so many different areas. Like, I'm a human geographer, as I've said, I was also fascinated in natural science, but I've actually found a way to combine them. And then I'm also really passionate about the arts, humanities, and I've also found a way to kind of, bring my interest in kind of performance and drama into actually learning the skills from that world in terms of how I might be able to observe the world around me and find new ways to carry out research. So I guess it's just it's a discipline that is really open to learning about new ways of understanding the world and doesn't put up barriers. We're interested in history, we're interested in the future, in speculating in futures, but we're also interested in animals, but we're interested in microbes, we're interested in viruses, we're interested in water, we're interested in deserts. I remember there's a first year essay which is all about speculating about desert processes on Mars, which always kind of confounds me how some of my physical geography colleagues are starting to wonder about the geography there, And so when I guess I've become, I feel that we're in a world where we've got to address planetary health. I hope that's a phrase that you might be familiar about. Climate emergency is kind of a word that's used as a lot, but the only way we're going to achieve that is if we can work out how we can all sustain living on this planet together and sustain huge amounts of different kinds of species and microbes and bacteria inside us. So, I feel that geography is the discipline that can tackle the challenges that we have over this next century. And I really hope that you'll come and study it with us at Southampton, because I think we have the critical bunch of people who are able to address these challenges. On the human geography side, we have people who are interested in kind of evolutionary economics, who are trying to understand about how our economies can work and adapt and change, and about what the challenges are there. We're interested in kind of human health, but also about well-being as a broader concept. We're also in some of these issues around kind of food security in our communities, issues around kind of food poverty, and using kind of GIS statistics. We've also got lots of skills about this kind of understanding where people are in the world. We have this incredible research centre called WorldPop, who are kind of the world leaders in supporting governments in terms of working out where the people in their countries are living. In many parts the world, you probably can appreciate the fact that there are not the process of kind of bureaucracy, and so there are lots of people living in parts of the world who are within a national boundary, but the people who are governing those spaces don't necessarily know that they're there. And WorldPop are currently supporting these governments to know where people are in these countries, so they can actually start to plan about how many numbers of vaccines are going to be needed once the vaccine becomes available for COVID. So a really critical piece of work there. So I just kind of I can't say that. I mean, and also we have people who are just really there to understand the experiences, for example, of single people, or issues about working from home, or that are actually trying to engage with some issues of kind of cultural well-being and then the experiences of the individual through to kind of these larger, great big topics. So I think there is, when I think about where you could come and study, I think at Southampton you are going to get a really rich and diverse set of kind of concepts and ideas that will support and thrill you as you start to make your geographer in the world.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing, and the kind of current research is just like so inspiring for so many students as well. Can you tell us a little bit about Southampton as a place? Like, what is Southampton like for students to live in? Kind of adding to that other side of it.
Yeah. So one thing that Southampton students always talk about is the really strong sense of community. It's not a gigantic university. It's a kind of place where people can kind of get to know each other. They can feel supported. There are a lot of, spaces that people go to, but there aren't so many that you kind of get lost and kind of never bump into people again. There's a kind of a sense of kind of an intimacy. We have a really beautiful campus, which I hope that you might be able to come and visit one day. Obviously, there are some restrictions at the moment, but do have a look. Have a look on Google Maps, hey, and maybe take a little street map and have a little walk around, see if you can do that. Or see the outskirts. You'll see that we're kind of set in beautiful woodland. Sometimes it feels actually, when I cycle to the campus, that I'm sort of cycling through a little bit of the New Forest, because it has that sense of wildness and ancient woodland just on the outskirts of the campus. We're also very close to places like the New Forest. In fact, my students who aren't currently able to kind of go to nightclubs are actually going off to the New Forest with deck chairs and taking drinks and watching the stars. That's like the latest night activity for Southampton students. That's the new nightlife. So there's a huge range of beautiful things to do, and a rich array of kind of societies. And I guess the other thing to talk to you about, we're really there to support you in terms of kind of employability and careers. I know that a lot of people are concerned about the cost of coming to university and thinking about, well, am I going to be able to get a job at the end of it? Throughout your time at Southampton, within geography, we have a kind of employability career program. We have sets of talks available for you. There's a career service where you can get advice from. We have a year, the possibility, if you want to take a year out to kind of get a placement in industry and then come back for your final year, having got some extra skills. And I'm talking to a student recently, one of my second years, and he's thinking about doing that, just because thinks it would be quite useful to get a little bit more money for that final year, and help to kind of also broaden his understanding about the world of work in terms of helping him kind of develop his skills for the future. So I think we're all, and I must say that when I talk to my dissertation students, or whenever I have my meetings with my personal academic tutees, it's always like thinking about, what are you going to do with this degree? What are you interested in? What skills do you need to develop? What kind of work placements? What kinds of voluntary experience can you get that's going to really help develop your CV and your understanding of the world, so you can kind of move into what you want to do after university and know what you want to do.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Yeah, it is a really, really nice area. I'm actually kind of grew up near Southampton, more near Salisbury, but I know it as a city quite well. So it is really, really pretty, and the New Forest itself is really, really nice as well. So I've got another from a Londoner. It is really, really nice. Brilliant. So if we've got a few questions maybe to ask about that, but we'll go first on to Steve. There was a bit on. And we've kind of mentioned it about kind of the opportunity to combine human and physical geography. But could you tell us a little bit more about that, if that's okay? So if students are torn between like BA and BSc, also what advice do you have for them?
Well, sure. And this, again, I think is one of the really nice things about our programme at Southampton, is that it does afford people real flexibility to mix and match throughout the degree programme. And of course, people's interests do change over, the 3-year time frame of a degree. So you might well register either as a BSc or a BA student, but by the time you get to the end of the first year, a lot of I know from my own tutees over the years that a lot of students that started out as committed human geographers or committed physical geographers actually switch to the other side when they get exposed to some of the things that we teach them in the first year. So there's that flexibility first of all, and then as those modular choices open up throughout the rest of the degree programme, even on a BSc or a BA programme, you can still choose modules across the full spectrum of the programme. And so that flexibility is really important, not just because we recognise that people's interests do change over time, but for all the reasons that Emma was so passionately advocating about what makes geography such a vital and interesting subject. The fact that you do have to understand these interconnections between let's say the physical world and the human world in order to be able to solve and get to grips with the problems that we're facing in terms of planetary health, the climate crisis, and other major issues at the moment. So that point that Emma made about barriers, I think, is really, really important, and the flexibility that we offer at Southampton means that there are no borders in geography at Southampton.
Right, brilliant. I've actually got us all on screen to kind of just talk about like a few things. So both of you will be able to hear you, so feel free to say whoever to answer these questions. Thinking about, first of all, careers. What kind of careers have students at the University of Southampton gone on to do after a geography degree?
It's one of those. We actually have a part on our website where we mapped out all the different career pathways that a degree could take you on, which we're kind of really, and then we've also got alumni who have been attached to these different career pathways because it is so diverse. Let me think of an example from my recent tutor group that just graduated this summer. We've got a student who's actually gone on to have an internship with Pucker, had one between her second to third year through the Excel internship scheme, and then she did it again as she completed her degree this summer, and now Pucker are actually supporting her to do a master's in global sustainability because she's been part of their sustainability team, and they've really valued her perspective, insight and skills as a company. So that's just one example. I have, there's countless examples of different people. Some people going to wanting to teach geography, like yourself, Ellie. There are those kinds of options, but there's also people who want to go and work in the civil service. I mean, I have a number of my recent students seem to now be working in central government, actually, in the Treasury, in DEFRA. These are people who graduated 2 or 3 years ago and now seem to have critical roles in actually managing our country in some way, or who are working on the research side in those government departments as well, which is really interesting. Obviously, some people pursue a research degree as well. They're kind of interested in that. They may do a master's afterwards. There are those who do the kind of town planning aspects, but then there are others who are much more interested in kind of urban issues and then kind of are taking, masters. I mean, we have our own sustainability masters as well. So there's that kind of more central kind of sustainability science angle as well that people want to pursue. What's your experience, Steve? Where do your tutees go?
That's the great thing about geography again, isn't it? It does open up doors for you just about everywhere. So you've covered a lot of the sectors that students go into. I mean, I guess what I would add is that, I mean, it is a degree program and a subject that does help create global citizens, people that are well equipped to meet the challenges of the future. And I think a lot of students really want to use those skills to make a positive difference to the world. So a lot of students end up working for charities, non-governmental organisations, and in the research sector as well, where you can use those skills. Emma mentioned the World Pop group, actually. Some of our students go on into careers doing the same kind of things that group are working in terms of understanding where people are, managing disaster relief operations, channeling aid to where it matters after major events. So the world's your oyster, I think. I can't think of a career path that you could not do with geography.
Brilliant. And I think like kind of a key message that we've kind of had today is that the geography degree at Southampton is so diverse that you can really specialise in something that you find interesting, and therefore that kind of opens up to so many different opportunities. It sounds really, really exciting. Another thing, Emma, you mentioned was potentially a year abroad. Could you tell us a bit more about this, or Steve, maybe where someone's been, and do students have to apply for it? Can they apply to it when they're in Southampton?
Yeah, so there's two slightly different things. There's the study abroad semester, which you take in your second year, and there are a number of different locations. Steve, can you remember the list? I mean, what the most latest list is?
Sure. I mean, there's a whole range of partner universities where, of course, assuming that mobility might work in the way that it has done a year ago, in a post-pandemic. But partner universities would include Sydney. There are institutions in Hong Kong. There are other Australian universities, Singapore, I think, some Canadian ones. And of course, this is also a little bit uncertain as well in terms of European mobility post-Brexit. But I'm very confident that we will continue our partner arrangements with a number of European universities across the European Union countries.
Wow, that's loads of places. You're making me want to go back to university. So
I know. And the students who do those years, they have such a great time. I've had students who've gone to Australia, Singapore, Utrecht, Canada, and it's just, it's lovely. Amazing. But there's also the fact we have this year in employment option as well. So that's the kind of whole year. So that would be something you do at the end of your second year, where you might say, "What's my degree?" and actually spend a whole year work industry. And that is something that we also support. So we actually, on the slide, you'll see this. And in fact, recently, I mean, I've got one of my current tutees is actually thinking about doing that. Is currently applying for an internship with Pfizer, actually, down in Kent, because that's not far from where he lives, and he's found a great kind of opportunity there that he'd like to do. And then he'll come back in his final year, and I suspect whatever he does, if he does get that position with Pfizer, that will actually then go on to support what he might do for his dissertation as well. He's somebody who's just become a BSc student, having originally been a BA student as well. So you're kind of seeing this is illustrations of that kind of in practice. So I mean, the year in employment could take you anywhere, but I guess it's if you're kind of thinking do I want to do a degree yet, or maybe I know what I'd like to work in, you could come with us for 2 years and then go and do that year in employment, and then go back to your studies and see how what you learnt actually will then shape and inform us as well about, what's happening in the world of work, because there's so much we also need to kind of bring into our university education about what we can learn from industry.
Brilliant. And thinking about travel, and I know this might not be at this current time at the moment, but field trips, could you tell us a bit about maybe what students hopefully will be going on kind of field trips when they arrive, or like where previously you've been as a university for maybe the different courses, or if they're the same?
Yeah, Steve's gone first, frozen, so I'll say a bit about that, perhaps. Just quickly, so yeah, the critical BA one is the fact in the second year we go to Amsterdam, have an amazing time riding around on bicycles. And then in the third year, there's an actual designated human module where you learn a huge amount about Berlin, which again is a fantastic European city. But we also have a field trip, which Steve will tell you about, which is actually much further away. Over to you, Steve.
Yeah, okay. So before we get to that punchline, on the physical geography side of things, in fact, all of our students do engage in field work in the first year in the local area, in the city of Southampton and the New Forest and other locales. In the second year, all BSc geographers engage in a residential field course overseas. This in the last few years in Tenerife, and in the third year there's an optional field course that's quite close to my heart as well, which is all about physical geography in very active, dynamic mountainous landscapes, and that goes to a tiny little village, the highest permanently inhabited settlement in Europe, in the Swiss Alps. And then the final optional trip is one that colleagues and I actually conceived a few years back. Water, people and environment. And remember those cross-cutting issues about rivers and how water intersects with development, energy, dams, you mentioned Mekong. Well, that field trip's based in Cambodia, on the banks of the Mekong River and elsewhere, exploring some of those issues. And that's one that really genuinely does try to integrate both the human and the physical dimensions of the course. So that's open to both BSc and BA geographers.
Wow, that sounds amazing. That all sounds very, very exciting. And I know I've got a student watching here who also probably is very interested in that as well. Finally, I don't know who wants to. I've got some kind of information on where students can find out more. Emma, would you mind telling us a bit about where students should go if they want to find out more about Southampton?
Yeah, well, we can. There's more information, obviously, on our website. You can follow us on Twitter. There's also our latest newsletter. You can hear some stories about our recent students and about what they're up to. Yeah, one of them has been making beer out of bread, or a group of them making beer out of bread and winning prizes for kind of gorgeous beer they've been creating. So yeah, check that out and find out what you could be doing with bread. And there's also, we have our own YouTube channel where we have a kind of a number of kind of videos which students have produced, or that kind of give you a lot of information about our field trips. You'll be able to see live footage of students as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both so much for telling us all about geography, a geography degree at Southampton. Yeah, you've inspired me to apply, although I'm 10 years too old. But yeah, if there are any questions. If there are any other questions that anyone has, if you're watching this later, if you just put them in the comments, and then I can always ask either Steve or Emma as well. So if you didn't manage to catch this live, please do that. That would be fantastic. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything final, any one reason you should come, one final thing to look at for students, or just apply on UCAS?
Oh, just one thing. I mean, look, geography is brilliant. there are lots of wonderful geography departments around Britain where if you're a geographer, it's happy days. I think we've given you a picture of what life is like at Southampton, that flexibility, the opportunities it opens up to you, the community spirit. I've worked at Southampton now for over 20 years. It's an amazing place. I love it. I've got brilliant colleagues, fantastic students. Come and join that community.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I agree, Steve.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lovely place to be. Yeah, come and join us.
Brilliant. Okay, well, just to say thanks for everybody for watching. We'll be on later at 8 p.m. today to chat to Worcester about their geography degree and thinking about VR glaciers, which could be quite interesting. So check that out with me at 8, slightly later time. But apart from that, have a lovely week, everybody, and I'll see you soon.